think that's yours. Hello, everybody. You're listening to CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm Jerry Katz. You're listening to Non-Duality Network Talk Radio, and joining me today is Dustin LindenSmith.
Afternoon, Jerry. Thanks for having me back. It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
Is that like your radio voice? What was that?
Yes.
I have a radio voice, too.
Yes.
I have a radio voice, too, but I'm laughing right now too much to use it. I can't get into it.
Sorry. Can't help you with that.
We got a serious show today. We have some, heavy stuff to talk about.
We got plans.
Yeah, I got stuff to play. We're going to listen to, we're going to comment some excerpts from an interview I did with a gentleman known as Gurudatta Dattatreya. And what's unique about Gurudatta is that he purports to be the absolute. I am the absolute, he says. And he claims that certain other non-duality teachers and sharers are speaking with tainted tongues, to use his words. So he says because they're not coming from the absolute, apparently. Now, Gurudatta says he's defeated those people, and in the portions we're going to play from the interview, Gurudatta mentions two people, or I mention them, Jeff and Elena, and that refers to Jeff Foster and Elena Nijinsky. Two people he claims to have defeated.
Now, just to be clear, Jerry, when you said that he says that these people speak with tainted tongues, he knows a lot about this business of tongues, tainted, all that kind of stuff. If you browse through his photos on Facebook, he's got plenty of photos with really attractive young women who aren't wearing any clothes at all. So he's got a whole other angle to this thing that is not entirely common in our usual circles of non-duality. I mean, not that it's not aspired to, but it's not common.
What kind of pictures are you talking about? Are you saying that there's might be in Gurudatta Dattatreya's lifestyle there's an involvement with girls?
Well, I seem to recall from the interview that he heartily worships the female incarnation of the divine.
Girls,
yeah. Well, listen.
Female incarnation of the divine.
I mean, this is the language he uses.
You're starting to use it now? Or?
No, I'm just...
It might do you well, actually. Your wife might like it.
Listen, I have to tell you something. I remember one of the very first satsangs we did, way down on 1313 Hollis.
Yeah.
And a whole bunch of young female yoga teachers and practitioners showed up that I'd never met before. Mm-hmm. James knew them because he's a yoga teacher and was connected to James Travers. I find out after the fact when I'm talking to a few of them that these girls are satsang junkies. Like, they love going to satsangs, especially if there's chanting and hopefully some dancing involved. It's like a particular experience that they really dig.
Yeah.
It's obvious from looking at Gurudatta Dattatreya's photographs that he has surrounded himself with a fine bevy of ladies like this who are really into that whole scene.
Wait a minute. At our satsang, girls like that came?
Yeah, they only came once or twice.
Was I there?
You were there. We were all there. They only came once or twice. They quickly...
What did I miss? They weren't gathering around me or anything? Like, what was the problem with them?
My friend, they weren't gathering around any of us, and they were only there for 1 or 2 sessions before they figured out that we weren't offering what they wanted.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Now you tell me.
Exactly. Sorry, man.
That was a few years ago.
That was a few years ago, but I recognize the same look in the faces of some of the young women that Gurudatta is consorting with on his Facebook.
What kind of look?
Well, I mean, it's a look of what's the word? Dewy-eyed worship.
Well, I think that really kind of describes what he's about,
Yeah.
Like a lot of the non-duality people are into self-inquiry and using the intellect to cut through the trappings of the mind.
Yes.
He's really a guy you surrender to. Just out of love, and you can feel it with him. He's the kind of guy that he has this big openness to him, big open heart, and girls and guys are just falling right into his big, he has a huge heart space, and I don't know how many people know the absolute, but they're surrendering to him.
So you have fallen in love with him then too. I can tell the way you're talking about him.
Yeah, it's the tattoo.
You've lost your objectivity. The tattoos.
I have, yeah. No, I mean, well, I interviewed him. I've been close with him just in dialogue, so I've had a chance to feel what he offers, and I can see what the other people around him, how they're acting. And there was one guy writing on his behalf, and he sounded like him. It's kind of like
really?
his voice.
His voice is being embodied.
His voice is like glazed. You know, people have a glazed over look sometimes when they're entranced with someone. His voice is glazed over.
Well, listen, like, I have to just for the record, I don't have any abstract moral objection to anything that he's doing. If all of his participants are willing participants, I don't have any complaint with all that stuff. What drew my attention to this whole topic, and then especially to a careful listening of your interview, was this business about defeating people, especially people who are like totally regular hip cats in the non-duality scene. And then when I listened to his description of that, well, the way you unpacked that in the interview was truly artful. As I said to you online, I think it's one of the best interviews you've ever done. And there's a lot of really direct questioning during this interview, which I don't really hear very much anywhere. You certainly don't hear it in mainstream media interviews of our political leaders or anything, but in this kind of thing, on such an esoteric topic, it's a treat to listen to it and to hear how he responds.
It's really hard to, I say, speak from the absolute. It's so hard to do that, and you're constantly tripping, I think. A person's constantly tripping, and I think, and just because you kind of trip over your words doesn't mean you're not abiding in the absolute. But
no, that's true.
But we're trying to speak about it, and it's hard. So I give him credit for coming from the absolute.
He's also young, right?
He's young. Yeah,
he's a young dude, and
early 30s.
Looks like his age starts with a 3. Looks like his age starts with a 3, and I think, if I remember correctly, he only came into this awakening within the last couple of years. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like fresh. Like, just think about your first couple years after awakening. It's fresh.
I don't know.
What he's doing is bold. Well, I mean, it was a really, really long time ago.
Let's listen to part of the interview. I just have
really
some. What did you say? What did you just say?
I said I know it was a really, really long time ago for you because you're really old.
I am.
Yeah. Well, I didn't.
Okay. I mean,
I just like to trip.
How old are you now? You
my age starts with a 4 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
4D.
40.
Wow.
40, yeah.
I knew you when you were in your 20s.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wasn't nearly as precocious as this young guy is. I love it.
Yeah. Well, he has great tattoos. I meant to ask him about it. I'm going to interview him again.
He obviously mastered something about the diet and nutrition thing, too, because when you look at pictures of him when he's younger, he just looks like a pot-smoking dreadhead, from my high school or something.
Well, we can ask him about all that.
He slimmed down, got tatted up, grew out his dreads, and he looks very beautiful. I'm sure that's a big part of his appeal, at least for those fine-looking girls.
Well, so let's listen to part of the interview. Here's where he talks about, introduces him as an introduction, talks about some of his spiritual milestones.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to put the needle on the record and see what we get.
Drop the needle.
We're talking to Gurudatta Dattatreya, otherwise known as the Berlin Baba, otherwise known as anything else?
I go by many names. It depends on who who is in my vicinity.
What are some of the spiritual milestones of your life?
Well, I can say that there was always a very strong awareness ever since I can go back to like 3 years old, 4 years old, recollecting memories of my life. And very like strong clarity as well, but nothing there to really embrace that or to guide me into that. And it wasn't really until 2011 when I started to explore what is called a sadhana, a spiritual path. And I started to inquire into like who I am, what is suffering, and I could see the fleeting nature of the material existence, just to work and to acquire material possessions and social status. And I saw like this is all very fleeting, what's going to come of this? And then through a spiritual practice in less than a year, I came to this what people call enlightenment, awakening. I call it a happening, just like this moment. But something profound happened where there was no longer this perception of a separate person with an accumulated identity, but just the absolute itself. So consequently, I had several visions even before my spiritual practice that has guided me to sell all my worldly possessions, my business, a job, my flat, a car, and to travel the world and to share this message with everyone who's open to receiving it.
Yeah, so that's kind of an introduction. It sounds pretty innocuous.
Absolutely. Yeah, everything he said so far is pretty benign.
pretty benign
Yeah.
and pretty standard to a lot of
Now,
non-duality people.
What is his like personal history? Because he sounds like he was, I don't know, like he's a Jewish kid that grew up in Long Island or something. But where is he from, really?
Gee, I don't know.
Didn't he break out in Berlin?
Yeah, he had his first set
So
sing
is
in
he
Berlin.
German?
I don't know, because he changed his name. I don't know what his
We
real
don't know
name
what
is.
his original name was. Okay.
I mean, it was Gurudatta. He legally changed it.
Legally changed his
Gurudatta
name.
Dattatreya.
That, you know
I
what,
don't know
right
what it
there, that takes cojones. Like, that takes nuts to do that. Guts, I mean. Like,
Yeah.
it takes guts to... If he's obviously very committed to this persona if he's
Oh,
ready
yeah.
to do that. Yeah, that's hardcore.
Well, persona is a good word. I mean, is it a persona? Is it a...
Isn't it?
a
Well,
what?
of course it's
It's a persona,
It's a
personality.
persona. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's...
We mentioned that in the interview, that it names a concept, and he agreed.
Yeah.
You know, he says, well, I'm not identified with it. Well, and I said, well, neither are these people that you defeated. They're
Exactly.
not identified.
Yeah.
But his issue is that they're still not coming, they don't stand as the absolute, apparently.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know what makes him the judge and jury on that.
I don't know. Well, like he says, because I can. I have the power to, which is...
But when he says it in that way, it sounds like he's placing himself in a very special position
Yeah.
that's different from everybody else.
Yeah.
And I can't... I mean, that just doesn't wash.
I know.
Yeah.
You got to be careful. There's a lot of room there for potential abuse.
But by the same token, if you apply something like, the sort of braggadocio associated with rapping, with emceeing, like with
Yeah.
freestyle rapping, and you get up there and you strut your stuff and you're bragging about your accomplishments or whatever.
Yes.
We don't have anybody like that in the non-duality scene that really puts his ego out there in front like that.
Yeah.
Just as a brash kind of persona. That just doesn't really happen.
Yeah.
So lots of folks just aren't used to seeing that either.
And it's great. It should there's definitely a place for it. It should be there.
No, I think it's groovy. It's like jazz, like not
Yeah.
everybody listens to John Coltrane or Nat Coleman, but some people.
Yeah, and it's great
all
that
jazz
Gurudatta's out there taking criticism and handling things. So as long as he stays, as long as he doesn't get into trouble, I wouldn't want to hear that. So
Most of these guys do, unfortunately.
yeah. Oh yeah. I'm waiting for it because I need to defeat him. I need, so my ego could be massaged. I need him to fall at some point.
Well, listen. Just before we let this, we're skirting around the topic of. I think we're skirting around the topic of sexual exploitation of your followers. So I just want to dip our toe in it for a second here. Just say that.
Well, he's going to talk about girls and stuff in the next.
Is he really?
In the next segment. Here.
Okay.
You want to hear it?
Okay, let's hear it and then we can talk
All right,
about
let's
it.
go ahead and play some more. Okay, how about one of those hot chicks, man? You like girls?
Yes, I do appreciate the female divine form.
Just leave her mic on.
What the hell is that? The female divine form?
It's exactly what it sounds like. He had his hands full of the female divine form on several of his Facebook photos. It's the female divine form. He worships the female incarnation of the divine form.
Female incarnation.
He's physically and sexually attracted to women, I think, is the bottom line of that one.
Okay,
He's just clarifying that for us. On that spectrum, that's where he is.
I'm going to leave the microphones open.
You may as well.
So,
yeah, we can.
So people are going to hear the recording, and we're going to
We'll have some reaction.
We're going to totally trash the thing. Whatever.
Are we? Okay.
All right.
Divine form. I'm not here for people to project what they think I should be doing or shouldn't be doing.
Okay, I can see defeating Jeff and Francis, but you got three beautiful women there. Come on, you're supposed to be chick oriented.
Yeah, the truth goes beyond the flesh.
Whoa! Oh, come on, you're no fun to talk to. Anyway, what are you seeing that the truth goes beyond the flesh? Well, you got to give him credit there.
Credit for saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, sure. You know what? I got to tell you, this is a little bit like jazz to me, because when you're playing jazz, sometimes there are riffs that another musician will play.
And you are a jazz musician.
I actually am a jazz musician. That's
true. You're a professional jazz musician. Go ahead.
But sometimes you'll hear a riff that somebody will play, and when you're studying jazz, you may be like on a famous recording by Sonny Rollins, there's a particular solo on a particular tune that all the jazz tenor sax players love, and they've learned it. But there's these riffs that you get that are instantly recognizable. They sound great. They evoke something elemental about what you're listening to. And Gurudatta has picked up a bunch of those good riffs. He can speak. He can talk the talk.
Do you think he's just copying someone, or does that come from his honest?
I can't say that because I've never seen him in person. I've never interviewed him.
I think he's pretty genuine.
It could very well be.
We're having a ball with him. Gurudatta, if you're listening live or on the record, we're having a great time here. Listen to some more. And our microphones are hot, like we are.
Says you defeated someone. Like, what's going on there?
Well, there's different unique expressions of the absolute, and these people who are expressing that, putting themselves in a public position to share their expression. And when I find fault in their expression, that it's not completely pure, then I acknowledge that consequently, and then what comes out of that is that they're not saying it in its truest form, which means that people aren't getting the true message, and that's leaving a lot of confusion and even more suffering, you would say.
So you're seeing something in the writings that's... You've said it's not completely pure. Can you be more specific than that? Or give an example, maybe, even? You might not have one handy. I can appreciate that, but...
it comes to like how they approach me and how they see the absolute in trying to create definitions and meanings to certain words, trying to say that you can't and you cannot do this. So they really limit the potentiality of the absolute when it essentially cannot be described. We can only speak of it in negation or in contradiction, but essentially all we can do is guide one within themselves to seeing themselves as such.
Okay.
Did you get lost there at some point?
I definitely got lost there because there was an epic paragraph of gobbledygook. But what he's getting to at the end, I think, is maybe what he's trying to say. But what it sounded like he was saying in the beginning is that he doesn't appreciate anybody standing up and calling him out on anything. If they don't recognize that what he's saying is the absolute, then they should shut up about it. But they can't stand up and point to him and say, you're not the absolute, or you're not doing something the way you should be, because they can't be the arbiters of whether or not he's talking from the absolute, because he is the absolute. I guess he's going to get to that later. But the stance that he's taking is problematic, although I'm still willing to actually let it ride because his awakening was so recently and because he's so young. I think that's totally fair game. Like, he's still learning how to be this.
Like you said, it's there's a jazz element to it, which means there's an art element to it all. And I think we mentioned it at some point that all this stuff, all these, every aspect of life really, but just talking about non-dual teachings, it is the teachers, the sharers, really are artists, and that's what he is. So he can't see anything wrong.
No,
there's nothing wrong going on.
They're interpretations of an elemental truth, which is what all artists are trying to evoke through their art, in whatever medium it is. This spiritual teaching game is an art of rhetorical expression on the online level. And at the online level, but the true transference of divine knowledge or whatever has always been throughout history, from guru to disciple, and so on, in this sort of lineage. That's a personal thing. So that also makes it a bit problematic about what we're saying about this guy, because we've never seen him in person. Although you have a better sense of his personal vibe than I do, but I'm pretty confident that that this persona that he's embodying is genuinely, like, he has a genuine drive to embody this persona. Like, I'm sure he's not faking it.
No,
this is really him right now. This is where he is. But just like Da Free John became Bubba Free John and Adi Dashamraj, and you kind of like, these teachers can morph over time, and that may happen with him too.
Yeah, they're human, and we're all human and have. And express ourselves in very human ways. So there's another section here. I'll play the next section. We'll see we need some more laughs.
Interesting. You said that these people, what you're hearing in their voices, is that they're saying things on the order of you can and can't do something. And what is that? When you hear that, what does that do to you then? What do you feel? Or
because I've been on my own path, you can say, and I've come in a very short time to this realization, if you want to call it that. I call it a happening, but essentially it's just in my nature to see these faults and errors, if you will, and because I see them, I can't just close my mouth. It's in my power to express myself, And one who puts themselves in this position should accept all challenges and have nothing to fear or nothing to protect. And of course, that becomes acknowledged when I'm interacting with these people.
Would you say you're like hypersensitive to these faults and errors?
Hypersensitive can be an expression. It's really an intense clarity, and I share that with all who are open. And of course, because of my nature, I also accept all challenges from anyone who wants to challenge me as well.
You know, I mean,
I'll just stop right there, and then we'll continue. What did you say about? I mentioned the hypersensitive, and he said that's I forget the words.
Well, he seemed to acknowledge that could be applied to him in this case. He said that is a name for an emotion.
Something, yeah, I couldn't just say yeah.
Yeah, no.
You had to go through an absolute talk or something.
But I did feel like he did acquiesce to you in the moment there. Yeah.
Now you're using fancy talk here. Acquiesce. Okay.
I think we should keep going.
Our vocabulary is too good.
It's too freaking good.
So these faults and these errors, like what are they? I mean, a lot of non-duality teachers talk about consciousness and awareness and watching the mind, stopping the mind, and I guess kind of coming from an empty mind, or not so much an empty mind, but a mind whose activity you're not attached to. And I think for a Gurudatta, I think that's not enough. There's kind of an atmosphere that all that stuff happens in, and that's the absolute. So there's sort of a thin skin between consciousness and resting in consciousness, resting in awareness, which is great place to come from. And breaking it, kind of popping that skin, or kind of like bursting the balloon, and then abiding in, resting in, being at the absolute, which is what he claims. It's like you have a pot and you have the air in the pot, and you break the pot and the air becomes one with the air around it. So that's kind of what he's done. I think maybe seeing these other teachers are kind of shaping a pot, some kind of a pot, as thin as it may be.
Interesting.
Maybe extremely thin.
It's a subtle distinction.
But yeah, and so when teachers are doing that, he says that's speaking with a tainted tongue, and yet that's how I understand it. But there's subtle differences. There's subtle difference between consciousness and the absolute.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, if I'm thinking of the subtle difference between the consciousness and the absolute, I think of consciousness as being just manifest absolute. Or maybe the very first level of the manifestation of it or something.
Yeah, right. And it's a subtle difference, and it's a huge difference, too.
Well, it's what takes on a physical, energetic form. Prior to that, the absolute is a true void.
Yeah, whatever words we would give, but yeah, absolute would be then prior to everything, even the most advanced and high spiritual experience. So I think maybe that's what he's hearing, is that people are talking about spirituality or a state that isn't quite giving way to the absolute. But what's next? We got to hear him. Do we want to hear us or hear him?
I don't know. I think we were being really wise there for a minute.
I think we're doing good. What are we? Chopped liver?
So, are we
What's
at the
the
clip?
next section?
Are we at the clip where you talk about the Avadhuta Gita? It wasn't clear to me. I think that's the next one, but it wasn't clear to me that he's familiar with that book.
He is. When we
is he? Okay.
When we talked about that, he is. I got to play the next segment now.
No,
so the
that's
next
fine.
segment is what does it mean to be defeated, and we talk about concepts and stuff. And this gets a little tricky part too. So I'll play that.
I mean, I don't know if we really covered that. And what's wrong with being defeated? And don't we need to be defeated like all the time, constantly, as we keep creating concepts? Don't we need to keep defeating them?
Well, one who is truly aware cannot be defeated because it's not in their nature. And one who is truly aware doesn't create concepts or find any solace in them.
Yeah, really? There's never a concept created?
For one who is aware, no, they find no necessity in concepts.
Well, I mean, as we talked, I mean,
Yeah.
he eventually admits, yeah, of course there's concepts created.
Yeah.
You need a concept to live. You need to go to the grocery store. You have to have a concept of when they're open and time and
Exactly.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's
Never a concept created?
For one who is aware, no, they find no necessity in concepts.
that's nuts. The one who is aware needs a concept. How are they going to get to their latest talk, or how are they going to get to the airport to fly to some crazy place they're going to, but the girls paid for it so that they can go there.
Well, you're right to call him out on that, and I can't remember. Like, let's keep listening and see if he actually bites that bait.
Oh, no necessity in concepts. Yeah, I understand that, but concepts are being formed. I mean, unless you're absolutely 100% free of all conditioning, and I don't see how some concept can't arise somewhere, somehow. You may not be attached to it, identified, and all that stuff. We all know that. We all know that non-duality is about not identifying with. But concepts, I mean, never one single concept ever arises. I mean, isn't your name a concept? The moniker enlightened mystic, aren't these concepts?
Yes, they can be seen as such, but I'm not.
They can be seen as such. They are.
They are.
I don't mean to yell, but
They are.
But
Yeah.
they can be seen as such. Either they are or they aren't. They can be seen as such. So there's a lot of vagueness. There's a lot of
vagueness, but again, like I do think you buttoned it up on this one. I mean,
Yeah.
and also the interesting thing here is that you're expressing your interpretation of the truth through the seasoning of your years. And I keep giving him a pass on this, but he's still so young. Like
Yeah.
he's like that. Have you ever seen those YouTube videos of like the 4.5-year-old kid who can do unbelievable kung fu?
Yeah.
Or like a 12-year-old boy who dances ballet like crazy or something. It's like that.
Are you watching 12-year-old boys dancing ballet?
Well, God.
We're now
Jeez,
we're going off the air.
I walked right into that one. It doesn't matter what I say now. Yes or no, it doesn't. I was trying to say something so that it didn't seem like I was equating Gurudatta with a 4-year-old kid. But it was a bad ad lib, I admit. You're not like a 4-year-old kid, Gurudatta. You're like a 12-year-old boy dancing ballet with lithe of limb and pure skin. Are we allowed to laugh this much on it? It's hard to say. Why'd you play the next clip, Jerry?
Okay, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So concepts arise. We're not identified. The idea is to not be identified with them so that you're not being driven crazy. Then you live your life. So are you saying that Jeff and Elena and all those people are identifying with their concepts?
Excuse me.
I don't know if I would say that they're identifying with the concepts, but they're not seeing the trueness. They're not expressing the absolute in its truest form, in its undiluted form, because they do have specific agendas and they do have images in which they portray themselves, which they very much cherish.
But maybe they're not identifying with it.
If they wouldn't identify it, then they would just be open to receiving me and to sharing with me, and that hasn't been the case.
Hold on now. Wait a second.
Right.
Has he been flirting with them and they've been rebuffing him online?
Oh, sharing with me. Does that mean...
Is that a euphemism for you won't take naked pictures with me or do
I didn't think of that.
massage with oil and candles?
I didn't think
all
of
I'm
that.
referring to here, these are all just things that Gurudatta has on his Facebook page.
Wow.
He's busy, man. He's got this whole female incarnation of the divine thing sewn up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep coming
I
back
think
to
you
that.
said it. The pictures are soft porn. That was a good description. Or at least one of them is soft.
Technically, I think it is.
Can you still get soft porn on the internet?
I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. I've never really looked that up before.
Can you get the... Anyway, we're getting way off the topic, but...
Thank God you didn't walk into the one I was leaving for you there.
I don't want to think about it.
No, I'm still getting the same sense from him that, anybody that stands up to criticize him is just wrong. And right now I was getting a sense from him that, that they weren't playing nicely with him, whatever that means to him. And I think you're about to get into that with this whole should thing, right?
All right, let's
see.
Yeah.
So if they're not identifying with concepts, then they should relate to you in a certain way.
Yes.
Jeez.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely.
Is that something you're attached to, maybe? A concept, maybe, that you've...
This is where you're pure psychotherapist.
So they don't relate to you. I mean, now, when we talk about relating to someone, I mean, there's, human personality stuff that we may or may not, have a chemistry with, which is fine. But there's another level, at the level of the absolute. I mean, how can there even be any relationship or identification? I mean, if there's no separation in the first place. It seems to be you're saying there's separateness, because they should be relating to you in a certain way. They're not, therefore there's some separateness. And yet, at the level of the absolute, how can there be separateness?
Yeah, on the relative level, there's the appearance of separation, but in the absolute, of course, there is no separation.
Oh,
all right, so
you really trapped him on that one.
What's going on there? You're jumping from the absolute to the relative. You're playing these two levels to your own convenience.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I do think that it's a very opportunistic adoption of the position of being in the absolute or not.
Yeah.
If he wants to be the judge of everyone else's behavior, he's coming from the absolute. You can call it what you want if you want to, and if you do that, then you're in the world of the relative. But it's got inconsistent logic as it goes across the
it really gets confusing. Yeah, it's a crazy. There's only 3 or 4, maybe half a dozen books, like scriptural books, really based on the absolute, and they're not books that are bestsellers. No one knows what they are. There's these different Gitas.
Exactly.
The Ashtavakra Gita is fairly well known. It's a Buddhist thing. Mm-hmm. I think it's Buddhist. But, it's this stuff's little known. So
run down a couple more of those. What is it? There's the Ashtavakra.
Ashtavakra, Avadhuta Gita.
You brought it with you.
The link of I don't know if I'm pronouncing correctly. Lankavatara Sutra, which is Buddhist.
Yeah.
The Diamond Sutra.
The Diamond
Sutras. Really, these are really extreme expressions. They leave you with nothing.
Right.
There's nothing you can say, but like he says, I am the absolute. That's saying way too much.
I agree, and it seems to be opening him up for worship or something, I might just be interpreting it that way, but he seems to just be laying down the groundwork for you to worship him, because he is the absolute. It's so literal.
It sort of seems that way.
Yeah.
But
it's working for him. Because
he's a cool person. That's the bottom line. He's a cool dude, no matter what he did. It could be a surfer, it could be...
And I'm sure he's got access to great weed.
Yes.
Oh my God! Like those parties, I'm sure they have in celebration of the female incarnation.
We don't know that, by the way. We really can't claim him. We don't know that. We're just saying a guy like that.
It's purely speculative.
A cool guy in general probably has access to it. We don't know if he does. We're not accusing him.
I've never had any personal contact with him at all, so I have no idea if he's a pothead.
Yeah, we can't say.
All I know is that he's got long dreadlocks.
Yeah, great.
Judge
hair
what you
and
will from that. Judge what you...
Great tats. Great tattoos,
The tattoos are actually remarkable.
Really, really beautiful, and I should have asked him about those.
You should have asked him about that, if they were all done by the same artist. They don't look like they're done by the same artist.
I would ask him, who did your tats, dude?
Yeah.
Because, not really. That's like a cool question.
That's the right way to ask that, I think.
That's the right way.
Who did your tats, dude? Yeah.
Is that right? Should there be a hashtag in there somewhere?
Maybe. Or who tatted you up? Or, man, your tats are... the tits? I don't know.
You have any tats, by the way?
Not a one.
Why not? You ever think of it, or...?
Mostly because of my soft, fleshy white skin. I think they would look terrible.
Ah.
Yeah. If I had any part of my body that was, smooth, muscular, and not pale white, I think it would look groovy. Apparently red looks good on skin like that, but I think that's more of like a pretty red-haired girl, not me.
Well,
I don't even know how the hell you get through the hair, honestly. There's hair everywhere.
I know,
arms, chest, back. It's just sad.
I don't know what they do. A guy kept bothering me. He wanted me to get tattoos.
Oh, yeah.
Friend of mine, and I said, won't want one. I said, I wouldn't know what to get.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, get a tattoo about something you really, really like. I said, well, would they do a tattoo of macaroni and cheese? Can you get that? Like, I like that.
I like
So
that
I'm
too,
not,
actually.
you know,
But when's the last time you've had macaroni and cheese? Because you've been off the whole like wheat thing.
yeah, I haven't had it in a long time. About a year. It's been a year now, like almost to the day that I've been just cutting out wheat and kind of going low carb.
You look amazing.
And thanks. I feel great. I do.
Yeah.
I feel great. And it's been a year.
Well, and it's really like with that tank top you're wearing, like you can really see the definition of your traps.
Can you see
your traps? Well, your pecs, like you actually
I've changed everything. I mean, really, I wear the tank top, my name, Barefoot Jerry Loveheart.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you should still work on the dreads, though. The hair needs to be longer for that.
I'm working on it. You know, your hair doesn't grow as fast when you're
exactly
65 years old. Nothing works.
Do we need to do any breaks for station identification or anything like that?
No, we're on until 2:30 here, our time, and it's about 2:07 in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
To the what's the word? I just lost it.
What's our show about today? What are we doing here?
It's a bit free-flowing, but to those denizens who are unfortunate enough to have to be listening to us, you're listening to us on CKDU 88.1 FM, broadcasting from the Dalhousie Student Union Building in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada.
And that's my announcer, Dustin LindenSmith.
Hey, yo!
And let's get back on track. Let's play some Gurudatta.
I'm afraid that we're going to get kicked off the air if we keep this up.
Right, yeah.
Of course, there is no separation.
So they should be relating to you in a certain way. They're not. And we all live in the relative world, so why do they have to relate to you on the relative level?
Because one who expresses the absolute can perceive through the filter of the relative level, but they see through the lack of or the non-filter of the absolute. So all there seems to be the appearance of these unique forms and the unique expressions. The recognition of the absolute trumps everything else. And what I'm expressing is that these people who are speaking on behalf of the absolute, they're not seeing from the absolute itself.
It sounds like you're dividing the absolute into what the absolute is and everything else. How can the absolute trump itself?
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, I didn't know the absolute did anything. Or maybe saying that when you come from the absolute, or when you are the absolute, that whatever you say as the absolute, it's the truth, and everything else just isn't the truth. So in that sense, it trumps everything.
Yeah, I don't see how you can make a distinction like that. I mean,
talked by any.
Yeah.
And he is the absolute. So, and he can say that. I don't know who else can say it.
He may be.
He may be
the second
absolute
coming.
Yeah.
He may be Jesus, and its modern incarnation.
I don't even know if Jesus was the absolute.
Well, listen, that article I posted about the discussion with Reza Aslan in the highlights a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
About his book, which is about the historical Jesus. I mean, was fascinating about that, and it made me wonder very much. Like, there's a part of that interview where Aslan says, you know, what we know about the historical human who was Jesus is that, you know, he was part of a movement for Jews, by Jews. He was Jewish, and he was espousing some sort of philosophies and approaches to life that were anti-establishment, and were also being expressed by lots of other people at the same period of time in different areas and stuff. The rise of the Christian religion seems to have more been a political, economical thing that occurred over time. It had very little to do with this particular individual who was Jesus. So, you know, anybody who is anybody could be this guy, Jesus. We're all Jesus. Like, I mean, to be, you know, perfectly clear. Jesus, we're all Jesus. Like, I mean, to be, perfectly clear, but it did strike me as interesting to consider the idea that, Jesus was just an ordinary guy, just having a movement of his own, just like, we're all trying to do here, trying to get people to see the light about what's wrong with the way we're living or whatever.
So it's possible that historical Jesus is like a consensus character?
I don't know enough about it. My understanding is that, the historical Jesus was a person.
Yeah.
But what the Bible writes about about Jesus is not necessarily about what he did or what he said. It's more about who he was. And the Gospels are written as a sort of an argument, a point of view to support the idea that Jesus was the Son of God. But the Gospels don't really tell us anything else about that. It's just it's an opinion. They're editorial, they're op-ed pieces. Written before printing presses were around, and and ultimately that became part of a book that was used to organize society.
Yeah.
But Jesus the individual doesn't seem to be, from a historical perspective, like there's not really a way to defend. How do you defend that position anyway? But anyway. I'm really digressing.
So we think Gurudatta might be that type of person.
Well, the comment that I was making in the highlights was how interesting would it be to see how Jesus would come across today?
Yeah.
Because he might not be an effective enough communicator to hack it in this world of social media and tweets and all that kind of stuff. He might just not be that good of a writer. You never know.
Yeah.
And what does it even mean to be Jesus these days anyway? Like, how many people... Who are the messiahs that we all sort of worship? Like, they're not really spiritual people. They're more like celebrities.
Yeah, and on the level of social media, on the internet altogether, it's more like the group you're associated with, or the groups are more like the gurus. The intelligence of the crowd.
Interesting idea. I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, the holo guru.
Yeah.
So it's not so much individuals that draw people. They do, but I think people depend more on the crowd.
Well, I have to admit that the nature of social media seems to be in an aggregating fashion, where you're no longer focusing on the individual, but you're backing up and you're looking at trends as they occur across populations. So it is more of a group hive thing. Like, you're not looking for an interpersonal... neurobiological connection with somebody. You're looking at broader, higher overview sort of ideas and stuff.
Yeah, and that may create kind of a vacuum, kind of a desire to relate to an individual. So maybe that's one reason Gurudatta is popular. Maybe people are tired of the crowd. Well, identifying with the crowd and want an individual, a guy, a person.
What's interesting to consider is, I'm just using my imagination here, but Gurudatta is a super beautiful guy, a really sweet-looking guy, and a sweet-sounding guy. And I bet you it would be really touching as a man if I went into his presence and he welcomed me as warmly and as lovingly as he did the pretty girl next to me. I bet you I would feel really touched by that. Because men don't usually show emotion like that towards each other at all.
Yeah, and I think he would.
And I think he would.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you he would. And I think that's a big part of what's going on here. I mean, if you have any person who can actually expose themselves to that level of emotional vulnerability when they're having a physical exchange with somebody, it's not common.
You don't see it with a lot of the non-duality teachers. When you go to the conference, you don't see people.
No, those folks are all
coming from that place of the
it's a cerebral sort of
heart. Yeah, you don't see that.
Yeah,
you see it with Maurizio.
Do you?
Maurizio has this big heart.
Does he?
Yeah. I think that's why he's really the heart of the whole.
I see.
He and his wife Zaya are really the heart of the whole Science and Non-Duality conference.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maurizio has that big love. He loves everyone. It's a genuine thing and all that. And I think the same thing from Gurudatta, coming from a little different place.
Well, and I suspect if the focus of this interview had been more on his love expression and not whether or not he was considering these people to be defeated, then he probably would have been talking more on those lines, and we would have heard more about that.
I think that whole thing with defeated hurt him because it speaks towards discrimination, and the whole thing of the absolute, it's beyond discrimination and non-discrimination.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole, that's said in the scriptures, in the Gitas.
Yeah. The other thing, just purely from a public relations standpoint, I think those graphics where they show him being the enlightened mystic or defeated against Lisa Cairns or whoever these people are, they look corny.
Yeah.
They don't lend towards taking him seriously. But if he could stand really firmly in the absolute and just be there and not try to like push that position out there, I think he'd be on stronger
He
footing.
might be quite a powerful presence.
But you know what, like, if he has that deep of a feeling of a connection with the absolute right now at this age with so little seasoning, then it's probably exciting to think about how this might evolve over time. You know?
Yeah, it will evolve. I mean, you can't say the absolute evolves.
No.
But way of relating to people.
Yeah.
Again, going back to the relative. I mean, this is a tricky thing between the absolute and the relative. And
right now we're talking about the mind-body apparatus that's called Gurudatta.
Yes.
We're not talking about the absolute.
Right.
Yeah.
But he is the absolute, so it's hard to separate them.
As are we. Yeah.
We are. You are. I don't know if I am.
Yeah. Well, I am a little more absolute than you. I
think so.
Agree. That is worth mentioning. It's like we're all equal, but some of us are more equal than others. Right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's levels in the absolute.
Exactly. It's like the levels of black belt in martial arts. There's first degree black belt all the way up to 9th, and yeah, you think that the black belt is the final attainment, but no, there's more. Yeah.
I have the lowest belt on the absolute. You're up there. You got a couple of more.
You don't think
belts.
you have a color belt? You still a
No,
belt?
I'm working on it.
That's funny.
I'm working on all this. What else do you want to do? I guess we got to play some more.
Well, we could. Yeah, we could. We still have time to listen to a little more.
Yeah, here's some more.
And the absolute trump itself.
Well, the absolute is the totality of everything there is, and through the absolute comes the illusion of separation. And when you abide in that absolute, then there's no separation. There's only the absolute expressing itself in everything.
This whole thing with abiding in the absolute, I think that's a little bit of a... who is abiding in the absolute? There really is no abiding in the absolute. The word abiding in non-dual awareness, abiding in non-dual consciousness, I don't know. The question is, who is abiding? What is abiding?
But that distinction that you're describing is, again, subtle, because so many spiritual aspirants have a picture in their mind about what enlightenment looks like, and it usually involves some image of, and it's kind of like a heavenly image, but or a celestial image of you just abiding in some peaceful, blissful awareness, and nothing pisses you off, or whatever.
And abiding sounds like almost sounds like a practice. I'm abiding, and
it is.
The absolute has nothing to do with practice. There's no practice.
But if you are drawn to a practice of abiding in awareness, that will have an effect on your personality and the way that you interact with other people. Like,
of course,
nobody will recognize you if you just suddenly start abiding in awareness every time you go into the world. Like, I mean, that's a radical practice for anybody to.
It's radical. It's valuable, and it's what a lot of the non-duality teachers teach and share.
It's true. And by the way, I know that Gurudatta feels that he defeated Jeff Foster, but several of the excerpts that you've been posting from Jeff's latest book have dealt exactly with this topic, and he expresses himself beautifully, lucidly, incisively, diamond cutter-like precision when he talks about people's expectations about the way their lives are supposed to be after enlightenment, quote-unquote. It's a very rich topic to discuss like that, and Jeff Foster's been really hammering it home in that latest book that he made.
Mm-hmm. Good.
I'm glad I got that plug in, because I get 5% on any book sales in the next 25 minutes. So.
Okay, and I get my percentage.
That's right.
We'll have to talk to Jeff, too, sometime.
That'd be great.
I can talk to him. I interviewed him once, 3 years ago or something like that. But, yeah, I mean, Jeff's like a real guy. Gurudatta is kind of out there in the absolute. But, all right, what else we got?
As everything, as infinite reflections, as infinite manifested changes.
So what's wrong? What's happening that's wrong or that shouldn't be happening? Tell me one thing. If it's is the absolute, Tell me something that's wrong.
Well, from the absolute perspective, there is nothing that's wrong.
Okay, so what's the complaint? I mean, who's being defeated, and why should they relate to you in a certain way? I mean, like, where do you get off telling people they should relate to you in a certain way, and if they don't, then they're not, they're not coming from the position of the most absolute.
This is my power. I speak from authority.
I call bullshit. You nailed him on that. That's just ridiculous. That's totally ridiculous.
My power.
I'm using my power. This is like, you're not Superman. No, that was BS. No, you know what? What was really cool about that too is that obviously he didn't recognize it, but he was getting darshan from you in that moment. You were asking him a couple of key questions that he needed to answer as a student, but he didn't realize that he was talking to a teacher when he was being interviewed by you.
Ah, well.
Those were great questions.
Yeah.
But he deflected them and then became Superman.
Yeah. He just said, this is my power. I can say what I want. I am the absolute.
Good for him.
It's
That's exciting to have that kind of power.
Yeah, it's also the foundation for a lot of abuse. I'm not saying he's abusing anyone.
No,
but if the girls start believing that, I'm dating the absolute.
Exactly.
I'm going out to the Burger King with the absolute.
Listen, there's a relevant thing to mention about this. It has to do with that documentary Crazy Wisdom, which I haven't seen, but apparently at least part of that movie documents the sexual peccadillos of Halifax's own Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, the father of the Shambhala movement here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And it was actually my mother who mentioned this to me, where she heard an interview with a couple of the women who were sort of implicated in that quote-unquote scandal, and they all felt very strongly that they shouldn't be characterized as having been taken advantage of. They went in there with eyes wide open. They knew what they were getting into. They knew that they were consorting for the purposes of gaining, like, spiritual advantage and to sit at the feet of the guru and that kind of thing, and they don't feel that they were exploited. So, it really it's a very subjective thing. It depends on where you're standing from. It's very easy for somebody on the outside to point their finger at Chogyam Trungpa or Andrew Cohen or whatever, or Rajneesh. There's all these guys have done different things that lots of people would just call into judgment. It's I don't know where you go with that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having sex with a lot of women. Really, there's nothing, or partners, whatever.
No, provided you're not exploiting them.
Yeah,
taking advantage of them, or and I guess the problem with situations like this, it's the reason why why the boundaries around the ethics of this for, say, doctors and teachers and stuff are so clear. It's because the power balance is wrong. Okay, if these girls enter in a relationship with Gurudatta, and he's presenting himself as the enlightened mystic absolute, they don't have any power in the face of that. They're going to feel powerless, and they need to do whatever he says. The power balance is skewed. They're not necessarily going in on equal footing. So,
unless they want that.
Unless they want that. And you know what? You raise an entire other topic that broadly speaking, is in the sort of dominance and submission realm. There are a whole group of people who do want that. And I'm not just talking about sexually, I just mean generally, who want to be dominated, psychologically, whatever.
Yeah.
Totally separate issue. Not sure if that's who, I doubt if that's the girls that he's talking to right now.
As what?
I don't think those are the kind of girls that he's talking to right now.
I don't know, but it's like Margaret True. You like Margaret True?
Margaret True, yeah.
Margaret True,
yeah,
she's great. She says, I'm submissive because I'm lazy.
Oh, man. Yeah, she's wild.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What else do we need to...
All right, we only got a couple of minutes left, maybe a minute left. I can't play any more of Gurudatta. A lot more I wanted to play.
Let's not play anymore, though. I feel like we've given him his due discussion. We've unpacked an important interview in the cultural zeitgeist that is the non-duality community.
The zeitgeist, yeah. I think I'll probably interview him again, maybe in a few weeks or something.
He may want to go back on the record after reading all the... I don't know, it's hard to say. By the way, if anybody wants to read some extremely funny stuff you should read the comment thread in the Non-Duality Highlights Facebook page about this interview Jerry did with Gurudatta. There's some like full-blown stand-up comedy being written in those comment threads. There's a lot of LOL moments in there. Dan, I don't know what his last name is, the guy who does Braying Jack Cass.
Yeah.
He's a good guy for a good punchline on that kind of stuff, too.
Yeah. I think we're kind of fading out.
We're fading out here? All right.
Thanks. Dustin LindenSmith is here.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much for being here. This was a great show. The hour. We need another hour. We're just getting warmed up after an hour.
It is true. The big question is whether or not anybody wants to hear any of us. Will you write in and tell us? To Jerry at nonduality.org?
Non-duality.com.
Or org, or...
No, for the email, be nonduality.com.
Okay. Doesn't .org hit you, too?
If I were in the absolute, yes.
Okay.
I could get it, but I'm not, so I just...
It sounds like I need to do some work on your MX entries for your domain name.
Maybe it would work, .org, but...
Anyway. Please email us. Tell us what you think about the show and our discussion about Gurudatta.
That's good. I want to thank everyone for listening. Thanks to Gurudatta Dattatreya. We'll talk to you again. Do another interview with you. And Dustin, thanks. Thanks to CKDU. We'll go out with some music, play a couple of ads. Coming up is Suburban Shadows with the great Nick BJ, the creative and daring Nick BJ with Suburban Shadows. So goodbye, everybody.
Hari Om, Shalom in the home.